This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Oh, you guys, this is the absolute best. What a day. It's Monday. It's the 30th day of January, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Yeah, I'm tortured today, and I'll get into it. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Mark Farzetta, who does fantastic commentary and coverage of Philadelphia sports, specifically the Eagles, the Farzy Show. He's going to be here today. We're going to get into it. Rob O'Donnell, a great friend, former NYPD detective, is all over the story of the 5 officers in Memphis and the beating death of Mr. Nichols. The reaction to it has been decidedly different than I think if this were a different racial component. I think we all get that. I'll talk with them about it, though. What of policing could we learn here? What of the training? What of the recruitment? What of the hiring practices? He has some pretty candid thoughts on that. Also, going to ask him about the Paul Pelosi videotape. I didn't get into this on Friday on the podcast or the radio shows because it happened after I put it all to bed. But I did want to address it today, and I'm going to get into that. Also, the Flyers, you know, they got into the Pride Night problem with Provorov, the Pride Night jerseys. Hear what the New York Rangers decided to do about it. It's pretty good. The borders are wide open, and Fortune.com tells you the truth as to why our borders are wide open. I wish I could tell you it's a Democrat Party problem. Little back and forth on Twitter and Truth Social with Trump and DeSantis and some of Trump's team, and starting to see some real fissures there that I continue to watch with interest. So we've got all that and a lot more coming up today. Don't go anywhere. But I want to thank John Ruhlman, the guy who, by the way, he is Cincinnati-based, so go gentle on John today. Don't be mad at you. No, John's a good guy. John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com. John is not only a great friend and underwriter of this podcast each and every day, but John wants to save you a boatload on health insurance costs. If you're paying way too much on health insurance premiums, ladies and gentlemen, John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com is exactly who you reach out to. Now, here's the number, 877-410-4321, 877-410-4321. Save 30 to 60% easy on your health insurance premiums a month. Does that sound good? I mean, we're talking about, 30 to 60%. I mean, I know people who have, saved thousands of dollars just by picking up the phone and calling and getting a better quote, because when you're talking about a guy who has access to 80 different insurers, 80 different insurance models. So you may be a small business owner with, 3, 5, 10 employees. Can you do better than the rates you're paying now? Does your team of people that you insure need all of the ridiculous bloated insurance plans? Maybe you need something more streamlined, maybe just for you and your family. Maybe your kids need something different than you. Maybe you're a senior on a fixed income. The point is, if you haven't had somebody seriously sit down and do the math on your coverage, you can do better than what you're paying. And I think John and his team at usmedicalplan.com can help. They also have a great care department, which walks you through all the insurance bureaucracy if you ever need them or have any hassle, so you don't have to do any back and forth with the insurance companies by yourself, all right? usmedicalplan.com, 877-410-4321. It makes me, look, folks, I can't lose. As far as I'm concerned, that's sort of my official attitude today. Welcome in. How you doing? Everybody's asking me. I'm getting heckled on social media. Well, what are you going to do now, Stigall? What are you going to do now? It's finally happened. Your worst fear. Tale of Two Cities. Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, just roll the 49ers, by the way. It was a bloodbath. I got to tell you, I never thought I would watch an NFC championship game and get bored. Were you bored in there, Fast Eddie?
I was, yeah.
It was boring. Like, I left before the half. I was on to, I was privileged enough to be able to see that Chiefs victory last night in person. So, which is a rarity for me when I'm actually able to see a championship. I've spent many, many years traveling on the road at great personal cost to have my still beating heart ripped out of my chest to watch my beloved Kansas City Chiefs in the past. So this is the first time that I've ever been able to be in person to watch an AFC championship game, and a victory, that is. Now, I saw a couple of years ago a thrilling victory by Patrick Mahomes in 13 seconds to go over the Buffalo Bills. That was a very exciting game, too, I guess. So I've seen two big-time games, but we were watching the Eagles game while getting ready for the Chiefs game, and like everybody was bored. Nobody was watching. Nobody was paying attention. It was so well in hand. Once you take out the wonderkin Brock Purdy, you take him out, and it was like, how many quarterbacks did they put in yesterday? They're like calling guys from camp to come in, see if they had time. That was, you take him out, and what are you, down to your fourth stringer at one point, and that looked ugly. You almost felt a little sorry for him, didn't you? They couldn't do anything.
Didn't, of course, want any injuries, but at the same time, for my emotional ride, when my teams are in the playoffs and competing, that kind of game works for me, man. I was totally cool.
No, there was no stress in that.
No.
I wish I could say that for the latter game. There was plenty of stress in that. Listen, I loathe Joe Burrow. Just loathe Joe Burrow. And loathe that obnoxious... You want to talk about a team... Cincinnati is like, they're trying to be Philadelphia. Cincinnati's trying to have the edge, the gritty thing. It's so inauthentic. They've got chili. Their thing is chili, and I'm not kidding. They're just sort of insufferable. They started calling it Burrowhead. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to be that cocky, you better be able to put up. And, look, here's what I'll say. I think the matchup between the Philadelphia Eagles offense and the Kansas City Chiefs defense is going to be one for the ages. I think that is going to be one of the most fascinating. Not that the Philadelphia Eagles defense is any slouch. Don't misunderstand. I just think that those two in particular are going to be something to watch. Mahomes clearly not as mobile as he'd like to be with the high ankle sprain, but all in all, with less than a week to recover, I think he managed okay. I mean, he was still the shining star of that offense with 300. What did I read this morning? 325 yards or something. I mean, it was ridiculous, and he couldn't move. That was him not being able to move, and he put up over 300 yards last night. Hurts looked fantastic. I mean, there was no aspect of the Eagles that didn't look fantastic. So I don't know. Where are my loyalties? Folks, if there's one thing I know about broadcasting in Philadelphia, you people don't like a phony. So I more than readily accept and understand that if I tried to pretend to be ambivalent here, like I didn't have a rooting interest, you wouldn't buy it anyway. But I do mean this sincerely. I feel so fortunate that in the last 5 years, I've been able to watch both my cities win a Super Bowl. And I do consider both of these cities my cities. Philadelphia has been where I've raised my kids for the better part of their lives. They consider Philadelphia home. But yeah, born and raised a Chiefs fan. You know, if you're born and raised an Eagles fan, you can move anywhere in the country. You're still going to be an Eagles fan. So yes, am I technically, yes, born and raised a Chiefs fan? True, yes. Would I have to give my rooting interest the edge for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl? Yes, that's true. Do I think that's going to happen? If you asked me to put money down on who's going to win the Super Bowl today, I can't do it, but I'd have to give the edge to the Eagles, no doubt, if I'm to be analytically honest about it. But I will say, in the last 5 years, to watch both of these teams win a Super Bowl is the coolest. I mean, that Super Bowl parade and being there in front of the Art Museum and Jason Kelsey and the Mummers, I'll never forget that as long as I live. That was one of the great times I've ever had in my life, and that was before the Chiefs ended up winning theirs, which was equally sweet. And now here they are, both back in the Super Bowl. Like, I know it sounds cliched, and no one's going to, who do you think's going to win? Who are you rooting for? I get it. But I'm sincere when I tell you, I don't feel bad about the outcome of this game already, and I'm 2 weeks out. And that's true. I'm not going to be sulking and mad. I mean, the Chiefs have made it to 3 Super Bowls now in 4 years. So, if you've got a team that you've pulled for your whole life and they've finally made it to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, that's not bad. Yes, you'd love to win them all. But I'm sincerely, I know it sounds Pollyanna, and hardcore football fans don't believe this and don't like it, but I feel like, you know what? 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, that's not easy to do, Fast Eddie. So you've already kind of won, it seems to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, and don't. I know there's a lot of craziness on social media, but you got to remember, you were called to Philadelphia. You served a purpose here.
That's right.
We welcome you. I will be perfectly honest. So, as we go through these next 2 weeks, Eagles, Chiefs, and kind of the build up to it all, I have more negative thoughts about the people from the suburbs flooding the city to go to the games and march down the streets and everything. It's just hey, come on, guys, get out of my neighborhood. I love you, man, and this is going to be a hell of a ride.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to have so much fun with this. I can't wait. I can't wait. I think it's going to be, because either way, I've seen both parties, and both parties are exceptional, and one of the parties is going to be hosted by a Kelsey, and that guarantees both parties are going to be fantastic. Did you hear Travis Kelsey at the end of last night's game at Arrowhead, which the Cincinnati fans were calling Burrowhead? Apparently he was on live TV there on CBS. Now, I couldn't hear it because I was actually at the game, so I didn't hear this till later, but they said, what did he say? Did you hear it?
Yeah, so Mahomes is doing the post-game interview, obviously, and Kelsey, of course, comes into frame behind him. He's like, oh, Burrowhead my ass.
Burrowhead my ass.
Right in the middle of the interview. Just pops up into frame, and there he is.
And then the Cincinnati mayor was mouthing off earlier in the week. Kelsey comes back on network TV when they do the championship trophy, and I heard this because you could hear it throughout the stadium. He said, it wasn't stay in your lane. It was shut your mouth and know your place or something. He said, to the Cincinnati mayor, shut your mouth and know your place. The Kelsey brothers are a force of nature, you guys. I mean, either one of these guys, I can't wait. I can't. As for Philadelphia, I saw the polls were greased, but to no avail. I saw some people crashing through the top of some bus stops. What are the reports on the ground there, Fast Eddie?
Yeah, well, luckily 19128, my zip code, was all good. We were just like before, driving down Ridge. Everybody's slapping hands out the car. Everybody's celebrating. But yes, downtown, you got those people coming in from the suburbs that overpaid for tickets to the game, and then they crashed through a SEPTA bus enclosure.
So you think most of the chaos on Broad and around Broad comes from suburbanites? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yep.
So you think the pole shinnying is mostly suburban kids?
Yep. Yeah, they want to climb the pole. They have that viral moment on Barstool Philly. And they're like, look, and all their friends share it, and it's all fun. Yeah.
You know the old jingle? I wish they'd bring that back. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com. It's true. We actually had a tremendous weekend of sleep on the brand new Giza Dream Sheets from MyPillow. I got them in the mail last week. I got the whole shipment, the dog bed for Dean, the slippers for my wife. I sent the whole team, my pillow, the travel pillow, the slippers. We got the Giza Dream Sheets and the towels, but because I was too lazy, and she needs help. We've got a big king-size bed, and she said, every time I want to get into bed, I'm too tired. And so she said, you got to help me put these sheets on. I said, give me till Friday. We'll do it Friday and enjoy them this weekend. So this was our first weekend on the Giza Dream Sheets. Wow, they were comfortable. I mean, really super soft. We slept a lot better. Frankly, we had really cheap sheets. So cheap they kind of crinkled and you could hear them. That kind of cheap. I said, what are we doing with these? It's kind of embarrassing. We threw them out. We got the Giza Dream Sheets. I got the big body pillow from MyPillow. It's like hugging a great big teddy bear without the body heat of another human being. I love it. I mean, the pillows are fantastic, the sheets. And then, yes, the super absorbent towels. How about getting out of the shower and drying off with a towel that actually dries you off? Here's the best part. Mike Lindell and the team at MyPillow have partnered with the show to give you up to 66% off, and all you need to do is use the promo code ChrisPodcast. Chris Podcast. That's what you use. You save 66%, and lets them know you listen to the show, which I really appreciate, but it also saves you big money on fantastic American-made quality products at MyPillow.com. Like My Coffee. Don't forget My Coffee. And there's like a slew of other stuff, bathrobes and all kinds of different slippers to choose from. You'll love it. MyPillow.com or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. Don't forget that promo code, Chris Podcast. By the way, Andy Reid was all kinds of full of praise for the Philadelphia Eagles organization and his time. He said, 14 years I spent in that town. Love them, love those fans. Going to be a party. Can't wait for us to clash, is what he said. He sounded sincerely, genuinely thrilled for the Eagles and their victory, and is really, really looking forward to Arizona. Mark Farzetta is with us, host of the Farzy Show. We have talked all season long about this possibility, and Farzy, here it is. The Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs in a Super Bowl. My friend, wow. How are you?
Well, just hear me out for a second there, quote-unquote friend. Okay.
Here he comes. You're going to try. Now, listen to me. You're going to try to bait me into a fight, and I'm just telling you now, it ain't going to work. I'm not going. I won't do it.
I saw Jason Kelsey tweet out, "I am no longer a Chiefs fan. I'm no longer a fan of you, Chris Stigall."
Hey, listen. Here's the upside, Farzy. Here's the upside. Either way, a Kelsey is going to have a microphone at the end of this thing, and it's going to be fun.
You know what? That's a W for anyone. That's a W for anyone. You're right. It's gonna be amazing. And look, I know the storylines that are there. There's the obvious, the Kelsey brothers. There's the obvious there with Andy Reid. But I mean, what matters above anything else, I think, just as a football fan, like forget the storyline part of it. What you're actually going to watch for that Super Bowl, for this Super Bowl coming up in 2 weeks, is Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, the best two quarterbacks this year in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about 1A and 1B probably in MVP voting. You're going to watch them battle one another, lead their offenses onto the field, and see who comes out on top, because both those quarterbacks are quarterbacks that anybody in the NFL right now, they want, because they ultimately, and Mahomes above all else, he always makes you feel like no matter what, you can win that game. No matter what the score is in the second half, you feel like you can win that game. And that's what I'm most excited about when it comes to actually watching the Super Bowl in 2 weeks.
Now, may I just say, and I'm going to say this and then we'll move on, but I think it's worth mentioning, and this is the kind of positive thing in the midst of what is obvious many times in this country, when the story of race comes up, it's tense, and there's a lot of consternation and emotion. Warren Moon tweeted something, and I think it's worthy of note, and I'm glad he said it. I'm so proud to see Jalen and Patrick as the first two African-American quarterbacks to face each other in the Super Bowl. We have come a long way, he tweeted. I thought that was awesome.
I know you said you wanted to move on, but I do want to comment on that.
Please, yeah.
I do think that is a great thing, and I say it from this perspective. I have watched my NFL documentaries from well before my time. I've done my homework. I know my history. And there was a time where African-American quarterbacks, black quarterbacks, were not looked at as being anything close to a leader. Yep. That you couldn't get a locker room of predominantly white men at the time to look to a black quarterback as a leader. To be able to look at these two gentlemen of color as great leaders, I think, is a phenomenal thing, and I am with Warren Moon on that comment.
So, Mark Farzetta, here is what I was saying to Fast Eddie a little earlier. Being privileged enough to actually be in attendance last night at that Chiefs victory, I left the Eagles game a little early because, well, frankly, that was well in hand. I mean, by the half, I was like, oh, they got this. I've never watched a championship game and been bored, but I have to say that was just That was sad. You take Purdy out of it, and there just seemed to be. You were saying going into this weekend, you were pretty convinced the Eagles may well expose the 49ers, and it sure looks like they did. Without Purdy, they had nothing, did they?
No, they really didn't. And look, I did say that before the game. I thought the Eagles would come out on top. I thought they put up 30 points on this defense, and they certainly did that. But to your point, I feel dirty about it. I feel like this. Look, I had the privilege, and I have the privilege many times of watching games with Seth Joyner because we both work together over at Jacob Media. And Seth, is still very much a player, still very much a player's mentality. And he was making the point that, yes, Brock Purdy got knocked out of the game, and yes, Josh Johnson got knocked out of the game. They're essentially fourth-string quarterback. But the Eagles did their job. They did what they got after the quarterback. They brought the pass rush. So there's no freebie in the NFL. And my point to that was, yeah, this one might not be free, but we definitely got it at discount. That's how I felt. And the Eagles, they took advantage of the opportunities that were presented. Their pass rush was just as good as it's been advertised, 70 sacks during the season. And to put that in perspective real quick, to how great this pass rush has been this year, if you would have told me before the season, which is more likely to happen, Jalen Hurts will be in the MVP conversation, or the Eagles will get 70 sacks.
Yeah,
I would tell you without question, the Eagles would never get 70 sacks, regardless of who they brought in the offseason or during this season with Linval Joseph or Ndamukong Suh and drafting Jordan Davis, whatever. Like, I would have never thought a Jonathan Gannon defense would ever get anything close to 50 sacks, let alone 70 in a regular season and 78 including the postseason. So that's how great that pass rush has been. They knocked out two quarterbacks last night. Nobody roots for injury. And the 49ers did not play at the level they had played at, where they enjoyed a 12-game winning streak going into yesterday's game. So the Eagles took advantage of the opportunities that were presented.
So the Empire State Building is lit up green in honor of the Eagles. No kidding. The Empire State Building says we salute the birds. How do you take that? I bet New Yorkers don't care for that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say this. I feel bad for New York because they're always dealing with that little brother complex that they have to Philadelphia. And this probably puts the cherry on top of that. No, from what I understand, it was lit up in Eagles green, and then I think it was lit up in Chiefs red for the AFC Championship game. Either way, if you were to shine a Giants blue light on William Penn at some point. You kidding me?
Oh, the city'd burn.
Oh my God! What are you doing? I couldn't believe that actually happened. I couldn't believe that it was for the reason for the Eagles. And yes, Giants fans very much up in arms over that. But I guess we get to we get to pat New York on the head like the little brother they should be for the first time in a long time, and we never get to do that here in Philly.
I have to say, and I know this is for diehard Eagles fans, a lot of you don't believe me, but I mean this. I said this off the top of the show. Having now had the privilege to broadcast in Philadelphia and be at a Super Bowl parade, and then watch my Chiefs win a Super Bowl a couple of years after that. I wasn't able to attend that parade. But I've gotten to see both of these teams and excitedly be in the mix for both of these teams. I've watched them both, and I love them both, and I've never felt this way before, but I sincerely mean it when I say, yes, I would love, of course, if I have to be honest and you're holding a gun to my head, of course I'd like to see the Chiefs because that's my born and raised team, so I'm not going to lie to people about it, but I sincerely, I'm not going to be ticked off to see the Eagles win. Not like I would be ticked off if the Bengals had won last night, for instance. You know what I mean? That's sincere. Right. I mean it.
I totally get that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wouldn't have it any other way, Chris. I'm not just saying that. You got to be true. You got to be real. And everyone knows where you're from. Everyone knows your team. We get it. When people come to Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, for instance, wearing a Houston Astros hat a couple years ago, whatever. I'm fine with that. He's from there.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to. Hey, look. Hey, it really is, in my opinion, a win-win. A guy like Bryce Harper wants to pander to me like nobody's ever pandered to me before, and wearing Philly Fanatic shirts and cleats and all that stuff and wants to wear Eagles jerseys and all that stuff, yeah, bring it. I'll take it. I'm here for it. I'm a sucker for it. But if you want to also root for your Vegas Raiders or whatever that weren't even there when Bryce Harper was, growing up there, whatever, I'll take that too. I'll take it too. Always be true to yourself. We're with that 100%.
So I did not really give the Chiefs a lot of credit going into that game last night. I'm curious to know, I said off the top that I would love to watch the Kansas City defense against this unbelievable Eagles offense. But similarly speaking, I didn't mean to give short shrift to the Eagles defense, obviously, who are monsters, as you mentioned, with their sack record. So in many ways, although Mahomes is gimpy, and I guess we'll see after a couple of weeks, he still didn't do too bad. I mean, even gimpy putting up over 300 yards. It's rare that you have two teams of this caliber meet up. I mean, at least on paper, right? It's pretty rare that the championship game is this evenly matched on paper anyway.
No, 100%. I will say, though, it's crazy to think about this. You look at the Eagles with 70 sacks. The Chiefs are second with 55.
Yeah.
So it's insane. But still, regardless of what the Eagles have done, these are the two best pass rushes in the NFL facing off against one another. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the two best quarterbacks in the league this year facing off against one another as well. So this is going to be, I think, an epic battle. I think the line is going to end up by the time kickoff's around. I think it's going to be right around 2. I think it's going to be a very close game. And I just think – I know a lot of people with these quarterbacks are going to be rooting for a shootout.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what you're going to get. I actually think you're going to get a very similar game to what you got last night where both teams were in the low 20s there.
I agree.
And it was close to the very end. And I think that's the type of game that you're going to get in Philly. And then the unfortunate thing is, if that happens, Andy Reid's going to blow it with a horrible time management decision, and the Eagles will win.
Well, unless we get a penalty for roughing the passer out of bounds there at the – no, I'm kidding. See, that's
very true.
That's what
Very
everybody's
true.
– now, all the Chiefs haters are saying that it was a flag that gave the Chiefs that game. But I think that was a legit call, don't you?
Absolutely. I'm dealing with 49ers fans today that are like, you guys intentionally hurt players. And I'm like, okay, settle down. Or you guys were awarded first down after first down. And you know what? They were awarded first down. You know what?
Yeah.
7 of them in the game, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
I believe 3 on a momentum-sealing drive that the Eagles were able to put together with that 14-play, 75-yard drive that the Eagles were able to counter the Christian McCaffrey touchdown with. So, yeah, the Eagles were given those first downs because of legit penalties. This well-disciplined San Francisco 49ers defense had legit penalties that you're literally shoving a guy's face mask, turning it around essentially on Landon Dickerson. You're holding A.J. Brown at the line of scrimmage. You're jamming Dallas Goedert 10 yards down the field. Those are legit penalties. The penalty last night was a legit penalty. Why are you touching a quarterback who is, first off, is going out of bounds?
Yep.
Is angled out. You have the angle on him, so it's not like he's going to go it's not like he's going to say, "Yep, tricked you," and then turn it upfield. He's going out of bounds. Why are you touching him? And not only that, why? It's Patrick Mahomes. Of course he's going to get that call anyway, even if it's close. This one I didn't think was even close. It was a legit call.
Yeah, that's. I'm reading a lot of fans, 49ers fans and Bengals fans, all complaining about the flags yesterday, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Wipe your tears with those flags.
Andy Reid getting to play the Philadelphia Eagles in a Super Bowl after he's taken them to one. Didn't get it done, of course, as I know everybody remembers. But this town was very, very embracing of him when he made his first Super Bowl appearance. I remember that well. But then it was interesting when Doug Peterson and Andy were in the postseason a couple of weeks ago. I felt like the tide had turned a little bit, and Eagles fans felt their love was a little more on Doug's side.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Look, Doug is the guy that brought the chip, as they say. He's the guy that allowed us to watch that Lombardi Trophy get hoisted for the first time ever. Andy and Donovan are viewed very similarly in that in terms of sustained success, in terms of always having a chance to make it to a Super Bowl, you had that without question with those two. But they couldn't bring you the ultimate prize.
Yeah.
Doug did that in less than half the time, and he did it with a roster, let's not forget, that was banged out. Like, if you want to talk about a starting 22, the Philadelphia Eagles this year are better than the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. I have no doubt or question in my mind about that.
Yep.
But on top of that, if you want to talk about depth, I mean, they won that Super Bowl, I don't need to remind anybody, with Nick Foles. They won that Super Bowl with Nick Foles as their quarterback. They won that Super Bowl with Halapoulivaati Vaitai starting for future Hall of Famer Jason Peters at left tackle. That was a very deep team. They had 3 running backs that could break it and take it to the house anytime. This team is deep, but when you talk about all 53, that 2017 team is even deeper. And Doug won with that. Andy had his best wide receiver in 2004, 2005, Terrell Owens, fight back from a broken leg, essentially, to play in that game, and they still couldn't top the New England Patriots in that one, which is a shame, obviously. But with the way that game played out, with the way many of these games have played out in Andy Reid's time here in Philadelphia, I know a lot of people still have fond memories, but the ultimate memory is that he didn't bring home the big championship.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see the old guy Andy take on the young buck in Nick Sirianni. I saw Nick. It was kind of striking to see Nick post game with all these little, the little kids. And that was the first time I really thought about him as a young dad versus Andy as the old sage. That's going to be kind of an interesting storyline too, right?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you saw all of it, but at the beginning of that press conference, it was like he was calling plays for his kids. He was like, okay, all right, you sit here and you sit there, and your sister wants to sit here. And then his son gave up his seat for his sister. And Nick was like, hey, good boy, way to be. And he kissed him on the cheek, It's beautiful. And, I for me, it hits close to home. I got young kids.
Yeah.
I'm around the same age as Nick Sirianni, and that thing definitely hits close to home when you see someone, that point and get to the Super Bowl and still just be a dad.
Yeah, he went from being a guy that everybody thought sort of an oddball and nobody was really sure what to think of him to now bleeding the city. I mean, he's now coining phrases they slap on shirts. But I remember his first press conference, people were like, what's this guy's deal? Remember? That's funny.
Oh, nervous Nicky. Yeah. Nervous Nicky. I watched that first press conference. I watched that first press conference and I went, is this a joke? I mean, and that's no exaggeration. I was thinking, this guy's going to go into a locker room now and command it? You know what? Maybe a podium and a microphone, maybe a press conference room is not his natural habitat. Maybe it is the locker room, okay? Let's give him a shot. And then the flower power speech came out about how you guys need to be flowers and daisies and all that stuff. And that was, I'll be honest, Chris, that was the point where I went, I'm out. This guy ain't it. No way. And from that point on, the guy has been damn near perfect.
Yep.
And his locker room, his players have rallied around him in a way I really can't remember many players rallying around a coach who was never a player, doing it the way they have done it under Nick Sirianni. I give him all the credit in the world. We might look at it as high school Harry. We might look at it as hokey. But Nick Sirianni wearing T-shirts bearing Jalen Hurts' likeness, Nick Sirianni dressing up like Jalen Hurts for Halloween last year, Nick Sirianni wearing Brandon Graham's T-shirts or knowing the fight song of Miles Sanders High School, that might seem like dramatic, over-the-top, movie-quality stuff. But for whatever reason, in that locker room, amongst these players, it works.
It works.
And it has motivated them and rallied them to the point of getting to a Super Bowl. It is really impressive to see what Nick Sirianni's done.
I was with a Cowboys fan last night who said to me, he had to admit, he said, Howie Roseman has put together a hell of a team. It was a Cowboys fan who swallowed hard when he said it. But he said he had to give Howie all the credit in the world.
Howie has had a phenomenal – look, what he's done since the Super Bowl has been great. And what by the book was his dumbest move may turn out to be his greatest move. You don't sign a quarterback to a $150 million deal and then draft a quarterback the way he did with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. But yet, here we are, Chris, head to the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts as that MVP candidate, playing at an MVP caliber level, and the Eagles going to the Super Bowl with him under center.
We will.
It's not how you draw it up, but damn, it worked.
I tell you what, I can't wait. This is going to be a long 2 weeks, but a fun 2 weeks. We'll have to check back in. Do you want to let things settle out a little bit before you start making predictions? Or do you already feel like the Eagles come out on top and you want to call it a day?
Here's what I'll say, all right, because we are 2 weeks out and the way too early prediction thing. I do think the Eagles' defense is a dominant defense. Yep. And if you're Patrick Mahomes, and to use your word, Gimpy, if he banged up a little bit,
yep.
The last thing I want to see is Hassan Reddick.
Agreed.
I don't want any parts of Hassan Reddick. I mean, you watched Nick Bosa get shut down last night. He's going to be the defensive player of the year. Lane Johnson's got half a groin right now, and he was able to stop him.
Yep.
So I think Hassan Reddick's the best defensive player in the NFL right now, or including the teams that made the playoffs. So if you're anyone on the offensive side of the football, it's all going to be about getting the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands as fast as possible.
Which
Hassan Reddick's going to be coming.
Which they weren't doing last night. The Bengals showed the Eagles how to do it. I mean, they pressured Mahomes all night long.
Yeah. I will say this. I wanted the Bengals. I wanted to face the Bengals. I thought that was the easier way for the Eagles. I know people are like, no, I want to beat the Chiefs. I want to be the best. No, I'll take the easier road. I don't care. The parade's not different.
All right, my friend. We will check back in before the game, certainly. But this is fun. This we've talked about this hypothetical for a few weeks, and here we are. So we'll check back in, Farzy.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Sounds good, brother. Great catching up.
Yeah. Thanks, pal. Our friend Daniel Horowitz at Conservative Review, he does a podcast, and here's what he tweeted. Now, I'm just reading Daniel's tweet, all right? Don't get mad at me. So we're left with McDaniel, McCarthy, and McConnell. Same leaders, all courtesy of Trump. And yes, McConnell is included. We weren't going to challenge him in 2020, but Trump preemptively endorsed him. We actually went backwards in primaries during the Trump era. Some of us fought the establishment long before any of these names surface. I don't care about 2024. I care about now. And I'm sick of this man, Trump, getting in our way, endorsing every person and policy or even product we are trying to fight. Ronna Romney McDaniel, by the way, he's referring to her winning her 4th term as RNC chair, and won it going away on Friday, by the way. How do you feel about that?
I don't like it at all.
I was a little slack-jawed that she won it by 111 votes, 52 votes for Harmeet. While we're talking about it, folks, I'm just sharing it. Don't shoot the messenger here. Katrina Pearson, who was a Trump... Well, she calls herself a Trump OG. I mean, Katrina was one of the original Team Trumpers, okay? Trump on Truth Social over the weekend wrote this. Keep Katrina in mind. I'll come back to her in a minute. Because she responds to Trump on Truth Social, who says, quote, "The fake news media was good yesterday in their coverage of my stops in New Hampshire and South Carolina. Other than the globalist Street Journal, which is rarely accurate or good, they said the day was really amazing. The enthusiasm to make America great again has never been stronger. The revelations about Ron DeSanctimonious." Okay, apparently that's stuck, by the way. The enthusiasm to make America great again has never been stronger. The revelations about Ron DeSanctimonious doing far worse than many other Republican governors, including that he unapologetically shut down Florida and its beaches, was interesting indeed. DJT leading big. Now, before I read to you what Katrina said, Fast Eddie, how does it land on you when Trump attacks Ron DeSantis for unapologetically shutting down Florida and its beaches? How does that land on you?
It's a political hit because that's not true. I'm not happy about him attacking Ron in that way.
I mean, everybody kind of initially reacted. I don't remember the window of time. It was not a full month. I know DeSantis, like everybody, reacted for a window. I mean, remember, initially it was 15 days to stop the spread or slow the spread or whatever. And I think, if memory serves, there was a 2-week window of time DeSantis did that, I think. It was brief, very brief, because he was like, this is crazy, not doing this, and repealed it quickly. But anyway, here's what Katrina Pearson, an original Team Trumper, she's been on this show many times as a Trump surrogate, right? She wrote this in response to that. You locked down the entire country, killing hundreds of thousands of jobs, ruining millions of people's livelihoods, set back a generation of children in education, increased domestic abuse, also increased suicide rates in children. You should really tighten up this line of attack, faux show. What do you think about that?
That's very surprising to me from Katrina.
Is that a fair attack on Trump? Is that a fair volley back at Trump? Because that's what people will say. Oh, you're going to hit him for closing beaches? You closed the country down.
Trump did close the country down. He can't. Actually, it even came up in your first interview with him. It was in May of 2020. Mm-hmm. That was a point of, he said it hurt him very badly, but they said he had to close, so he did.
So would it be a mistake for Trump to continue to say, you shut your state down, you shut your beaches down? Because then quickly someone could pivot and say, you close the country down.
Yeah, you probably should find another line of attack.
Yeah, well, look, and so it begins, right? This won't be the last volley between these two. To Memphis. Memphis cops charged in Nichols' murder, hired after PD relaxed job requirements. At least 2 out of 5 Memphis police officers charged with murder in the fatal beatdowns of Mr. Nichols joined the force after the department relaxed its hiring requirements. Officers Bean and Haley both joined the Memphis Police Department August 2020, more than 2 years after the department dramatically loosened the education qualifications to become an officer. Recruits no longer needed an associate's degree or 54 college credit hours to join the force and could get by with 5 years work experience. Loosening the required qualifications, however, means that the department is ultimately getting less desirable job candidates. They're desperate. They want officers. They're going through it. They check off some boxes saying, okay, they're good enough. Get them on. The department showed signs of struggle with recruiting new officers, offering $15,000 signing bonuses in 21 and 22. Bean and Haley joined the force 2 years after the department drastically loosened requirements. Okay. Thousands gathered in cities across the country over the weekend to protest the killings of Nichols after the release of video footage on Friday showed Memphis police officers beating him, who later died. Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported that a large group of protesters marched through the city, briefly stopped at the Milwaukee Police Department. Thousands of protesters expected to gather in Oakland, or I guess did gather over the weekend. Did you hear what Van Jones? Listen, it's not even a question that this is an unconscionable beating. The man was beaten to death. You'll get no argument from me about it. I don't defend the officers in the action. I don't even defend, and to this day, I know people quibble and argue about the George Floyd thing and how George Floyd died. I still don't think the officers handled that properly. Even though George Floyd has a checkered past and was a drug head and all kinds of things and was resisting arrest. And yes, I know people always say if you wouldn't resist arrest or what, it doesn't matter. Cops are held to a higher standard. You don't beat people into submission when there's 5 of you and you're detaining a guy. Like you're out. 5 cops can handle a guy. 5 cops can handle a guy without beating him to death. And I don't care what you say, and I don't care what you say about him resisting. I don't just shut up. Stop it. The blind loyalty in defending cops, no matter what, is stupid. You're going to lose. Just stop it. You don't beat a guy to death when there's 5 of you. I mean, with the help of 4 other guys, I could beat a guy to death, and I'm nothing. Okay? So it's not a fair fight. It's not evenly matched. It's not one-on-one. It's not accidental. The guy was beaten to death. That's all. There's nothing more to talk about. Issue, of course, was this racial? No, because all 5 of the officers involved in this beating death were black. And I pointed this out to you last week and said this is going to be very interesting in the way they cover this story. How are they going to talk about it? Tricky. 5 black officers beat to death a black man. It can't be racially motivated, can it? Well, Van Jones says, hold my beer.
Who is victimized, often more telling than the race of the aggressor. What is your reaction?
Yeah, I think it's really important because there's this very simplistic notion that says, well, if a white cop is doing something to an unarmed black person, then that's racism. But we sometimes forget, unfortunately, African Americans can also be guilty of hatred and bias and bigotry against other African Americans. Sometimes you go into a store that's owned by an African American, they're nice to the white folks and suspicious of you. It's not that only one group can harbor anti-black bias. It's so pervasive. And so the other thing that happens is certain neighborhoods are just considered almost by some police departments war zones. Anything goes over there. You know, just do what you have to do. And so black officers can pick up on those kinds of cues, those kinds of signals when nobody gets in trouble for acting a certain way in this neighborhood versus in a white neighborhood. So race is an element here. I can't imagine any police officers delivering that kind of brutal beating to a white male U.S. citizen. Can you imagine if you had 5 black officers doing that? It's very hard to imagine. I think what has happened is we've become accustomed, black and white officers, to a certain amount of inhumanity being directed in certain neighborhoods with certain suspects, and you saw that play out today.
Yeah. He wrote as much at CNN.com. Headline, the police who killed Nichols were black, but they might still have been driven by racism. And here's a pull quote. I posted this over the weekend. You had much to react to on social media, by the way. One of the sad facts about anti-black racism is that black people ourselves are not immune to its pernicious effects. Society's message that black people are inferior, unworthy, and dangerous is pervasive. Over many decades, numerous experiments have shown that these ideas can infiltrate black minds as well as white. Self-hatred is a real thing. So you see, these black officers wailed on Nichols, beat him to death out of self-loathing. The culture of the United States has taught these 5... Now, if we walk this out, and let's be really careful here. If we walk this out, is Van Jones calling for sympathy for the 5 officers? I have none. I personally think these 5 officers should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Van Jones seems to think we should pause and try to understand their self-loathing. He seems to think this is a psychological problem. We've taught these 5 officers to hate this black man because of the color of his skin, and so they were basically beating him like a piñata, taking out their self-hatred on Mr. Nichols. So this is a psychological struggle that these 5 officers... So I guess his defense attorney should enter this into the hearings as something the jury should consider. No, they didn't murder him. They were engaged in self-loathing. Pity these 5 officers. The racist constructs of this country, the racist undertones of this country have taught these 5 officers to hate themselves, and thus, whenever they see anyone of black skin, they hate them too. You think a jury of their peers would buy that? So it's an ultimate heads I win, tails you lose argument. Race hustling, folks, is a profession. It is a money-making profession, and you can't have the money dry up with a storyline 5 black officers beat black suspect to death. That would dry this thing right up. White officers beat black suspects to death, not black officers. So, what's the creative new spin? Self-hatred. The racism is so pernicious and so pervasive in the United States, blacks can't help themselves. When they're in a position of authority, they take that out on fellow blacks. Now, let me ask you something. What sense does that make? Because it seems to me if black folks really hated themselves and had an axe to grind, wouldn't it stand to reason that black folks in power would do nothing but go out and round up and beat the hell out of and abuse whites? But Van Jones' take is psychologically, no, they just want to run around and round up and beat up fellow black folks because they hate themselves so much. I mean, that's a Laffy Taffy, that's a Stretch Armstrong kind of pretzel he's twisting himself in. But if that's what he chooses to tell himself, so be it. I think most serious people do not take him seriously. Interesting headline from Fortune. Remember when Nancy Pelosi said who's going to pick the crops when discussing the open border? Chuck Schumer said something similar. Who's going to pick the crops? Remember when Jeb Bush said years ago that immigrants are more fertile? Headline, millennials and Gen Z won't have enough kids to sustain America's population, so it's up to immigrants to make up the baby shortfall. And here's the dirty little secret, the real truth to our open borders and why you feel like not enough's being done. Both parties are in on it. The political class likes it this way. Washington, D.C. has gotten together, and they've all concluded, most all of them have concluded together, open borders is good for us. And ultimately, by the way, that means amnesty is good for us because we need to turn all these millions of people streaming across the border illegally into citizens and quick. Why? Our tax base is drying up. You legal citizens out there aren't procreating. You're not as fertile. You're not making babies. We need more taxpayers in this country. And we ain't going to get them from you people sitting around here, native born. Young people aren't making babies fast, Eddie. So we're going to have to bring in illegals by the millions to repopulate. And that means we're going to have to turn them into citizens so that we can collect tax revenue from them, don't you see? I mean, Fortune's admitting it. America's falling fertility rates have been a cause for concern for several decades. Then, early in the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a short-lived baby bust when conceptions fell slightly. Months later, the rates rebounded but were inconsequential compared to the huge number of daily deaths. Over the next few decades, demographers expect the population growth to further decline. But there's hope. There's hope. Immigrants. This is from Fortune.com, by the way. A report by the Congressional Budget Office released last week predicts the nation's population will near 373 million by 2053, up almost 3 million from CBO estimates a year ago. The difference? An increase in immigrants over the next 3 decades. Oh, well, see, it's good. So this is Fortune telling you this is a good thing, all these millions of people streaming in. Why, COVID killed off so many of us, and so many of us who are living here legally don't have babies anymore, so we need all these people streaming in by the millions. Joe Biden's open border policy is a good thing. Who's going to pick the crops and pay the taxes? This is folks, I wish I could tell you that this is a Democrat philosophy. This is a Chamber of Commerce, Thurston and Lovey Howell, top hat, mainline, monocle-wearing Republican line of view as well. So this is a very bipartisan point of view. This is in Fortune, by the way. I'm literally the Thurston Howell publication of choice. Fortune. They're ecstatic. So you want to know why our borders are wide open and we're being overrun? The political class, the uniparty, both parties want it that way. Why do they hate Donald Trump? He wanted to build a wall. He ran on building a wall. That's why they hated his guts. That's why they ran him out of town. That's why there was uniformed opposition to Donald Trump. He wanted to stop the free flow of people picking the crops and waiting the tables and making the babies. I mean, if you're going to keep spending trillions and trillions of dollars, we're going to need a tax base to pay into that. And you people aren't making babies fast enough, so bring in the Guatemalans. One more thing, just because I love this. The Rangers. I'm not much of a hockey fan at all. I don't know anything about it. But I love that the Rangers, they looked at what happened to the Flyers on this Pride Night jersey thing, and they were like, we're out. No Pride Night jerseys here. After Provorov refused to wear the Pride Night jersey and all hell broke loose, although Provorov's jersey sold out. So the Rangers, the hockey team there in New York, they were like, we're not doing Pride Night jerseys. We're not doing it at all. Like the media is in orbit because the Rangers just said we're not doing Pride Night jerseys. We're not wearing them at all. None of us are. We're not doing it. We cancel it. How dare you? No, I would say that this is one of the smartest professional sports moves I've heard of in a while. They just we're not going to wear the jersey. No thanks. Bob Spinato is my dentist and a dear personal friend of mine for a very, very long time, and a big Eagles fan. So he's smiling ear to ear today, I can promise you that. And if you want a brighter, wider smile to celebrate your Eagles, or in my case, my Chiefs, I have one of Bob Spinato's smiles. He installed it in my head over a decade ago, and I get compliments on it everywhere I go. You want the best in cosmetic dentistry, absolutely the best in the Philadelphia area? There's only one guy, Bob Spinato. In Broomall, right off the Blue Route, for you guys in Philly, you know, but even if you're in the region, I'm serious, even if you need to travel, even out of state, like Bob is that good at cosmetic dentistry. If you're going to spend the money and invest on a new smile, he's your man. But if you just need a general dentist and you're anywhere in the area, you go twice a year. That's all, to take care of your teeth twice a year. It's worth going out of your way for excellence, and he is excellent. Won't hurt you, won't judge you, won't make you feel bad. Never, ever wants you to feel anything but 100% positive. I mean, it's why people send him gifts and write him notes and text me after I recommend them and say, you were right, he was awesome. They do, but you have to go meet him yourself to see what I'm talking about. And I promise you, I have never steered a single listener wrong in, the 12 years I've been talking about him. Never, ever. And I'm serious, not a single negative comment about Bob or his team at Williamsburg Dental. 610-353-2700, 610-353-2700, or williamsburg-dental.com. We bring in Rob O'Donnell, retired NYPD detective, senior national law enforcement contributor for Law Enforcement Today, and soon to be afternoon drive host on an as-yet-to-be-determined radio station. And, well, it's been determined, but he can't say legally. So he's doing afternoon drive on a new station in, I'll just say in Pennsylvania. We'll leave it at that. So, Rob, congratulations, my man. Glad to have you here today. Wanted to talk with you about these Memphis police officers. 5 of them, all black. The suspect they beat to death, also black. And I often wondered to myself, would the story be different if a black suspect was the victim of criminal activity, and it looks criminal to me that these officers savagely beat the guy, but they were all black? Does that change the nature of the conversation?
In Memphis specifically, you have all black officers in this incident. You have a black police chief. You have a majority black city council. The police department, from what I understand, is a majority black. To say this is part of a systemic issue is just ridiculous. I think we all know that the opportunist, if this was 5 white officers and this individual, this victim, half the nation would be burning this weekend because that's just the opportunity they take. Look, it's race. Look, it's policing. No, these are just bad guys. Like I said, with the 30 million contacts a year, there's only a very few of these incidents. Like you hear the charlatans like an Al Sharpton and the Ben Crump and these people who get on TV and they say they always go back to the same incidents, and they still bring up Michael Brown, who was the biggest fallacy in law enforcement because his hands were never up and he never said, don't shoot. He grabbed the cop's gun. But they still each year memorialize him. They still each year say he was the victim when, in fact, he was the aggressor, and it's been proven by Obama's DOJ. But they bring back the Freddie Gray, the Rodney King in this incident. They compared it to that. The George Floyd. They always go to the same half dozen incidents in the past 8 or 9 years. So if this was so systemic, wouldn't this be happening weekly? Wouldn't it be happening daily? And the fact that to say this is race-based, these 5 black officers gathered up at roll call that morning and says, we're going to go out and find us a black man and we're going to kill him. We're going to beat him to almost death. No, that's not how this happened. This was just guys who just don't have the demeanor or mentality to ever be a police officer. And we're finding out today that the International Association of Chiefs of Police, due to the recruitment and retention issue, because of the systemic anti-police rhetoric and atmosphere, this defund the police atmosphere that's out there, even if they haven't taken the money away, they've changed it and they've created an atmosphere where no one wants to be a cop anymore, and cops that are out there just want to walk away. Over 50% of the police departments in this nation have lowered their standards. All these officers, these 5 officers, all have 5 or less years on the job, which is when this all started, when the defund the police movement started, where people with experience in their 20 years started walking away because they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They didn't want to be labeled these racist white supremacists that are out there policing their neighborhoods, when each day, day in and day out, they're out there risking their lives for these same communities.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, and I'm glad you brought it up, Rob O'Donnell, former NYPD detective, soon-to-be afternoon drive host on a yet-to-be-named radio station. We'll have you back, and we'll name the station soon. But the Memphis Police Department's hiring standards, 2 of the 5 officers joined the department in August 2020, more than 2 years after the department dramatically loosened the education requirements to become an officer. Recruits no longer needed an associate's degree or 54 hours of credit to join the force. They could get by with 5 years work experience. Let me. How do I ask this? The education requirement specifically. Can you speak to that? Because I don't ever want to hold out degrees, college degrees, as a panacea. We talk often about. I mean, lots of people have made great careers without college degrees. So we certainly wouldn't suggest you can't be a great cop unless you have a diploma on the wall, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was hired, it was a high school diploma back in the late 80s, early 90s in New York City. It was a high school diploma. There was no college necessary. Some of the greatest cops I know only have high school diplomas. If you were in the military, they were allowed a GED with military experience. I don't think this is so much an education issue. I think it's more of, because they're lowering the education standard, that's something easy for them to point at because, okay, look, we lower the education standard. But they're also, because they lowered that, they know they're not getting the numbers they went, where they would normally get 10,000 applicants. Now they're only getting 1,000 or 1,500 applicants. They're picking the people they normally would bypass. And the education standard being lowered is just part of that, because that just means they're not getting the people, the numbers they need to pick and choose the best of the best. They are settling for people they would normally pass over.
You have a note here, at least that I'm reading. I think it's attributed to you. Less than 1% of the 800,000 police professionals that have over 30 million face-to-face contacts with the public. This happens in less than 1%. I mean, that is an important stat to keep in mind of direct police interactions. This is still, while horrendous, it is far from the norm.
Absolutely, and that's why I stress that fact. I mean, I know every police officer I know is walking around. They're angry. They're angry at this because it makes our job that much harder, because it gives the people that don't understand the facts and the numbers behind it. Oh, see how you guys are? No, our guys aren't like that. We're just as angry as you are. And if you look at the system here, the system worked exactly the way it should. I mean, they're out protesting and smashing cars in Times Square. You know, there were protests around the nation. Mostly, I mean, these were actually mostly peaceful from what we saw. You know, there were a couple of assaults on police officers in New York, but the system worked swiftly and decisively. These officers were investigated, they were fired, probable cause was determined, and they were arrested. They will stand trial, and they will be held to a higher standard. What else does the public want? This is how it's supposed to work.
Rob, I have noted now in both this case in Memphis as well as the Pelosi, the Paul Pelosi story that also came out Friday, interestingly, both had body cam footage that proved to be very, very helpful in learning more. Speak to the body cam. Are officers generally supportive of the concept of body cams? Have they been helpful? Are they a deterrent? Are they frustrating? Are officers more mindful that thing is rolling and on? What's been the role there?
I personally love body cameras, and everyone I know that has them loves them. When body cameras first came out, there was a lot of controversy, and you see the anti-police or the accountability wing for the police were like, we need body cams. We need to see what's happening. We're going to catch them doing what they keep telling us they're not doing. And when the body cams came out, what did it do? It showed 99% of the time. Again, there's that less than 1% and 800,000, but 99% of the time, it supported what the officers were saying, that the individual did resist arrest, that he did produce a gun, that he did take out a weapon. So police officers, time and time again, where now you're seeing the ACLU and other organizations who fought for body cameras coming out and saying, we don't want them anymore, because it didn't show what they wanted it to show. It didn't show what they expected it to show.
The Paul Pelosi story, quickly, I didn't bring you on to talk about it, so maybe you don't feel qualified to talk about it, but I just issued on social media a statement because I was off the air by this time on Friday. But I felt I had to say, and I'll just say here for the record, my initial read on that whole story was that there was a lot up that we didn't know, that it was a lot, hinky, if not downright, dirty and covered up. And after the body cam footage was released and the 911 call was released as ordered by a judge, it was clear it was minutes between call to 911, officers showing up at the front door. It was minutes. The body cam footage showed us what happened. There was a hammer. Paul Pelosi was detained by this guy with the hammer. The guy did swing a hammer at the guy. He fell in a heap in a pool of blood. I mean, it was pretty grisly. But I'll be honest, like the shroud of secrecy around that, I didn't believe it. Like, I just didn't believe Capitol Police, had fallen down on the job. Like, I wasn't even sure there was truly a break-in. But it all seems to pan out. So one, I'll get you to comment on just what you saw and how it unfolded. But two, I heard a lot of criticism actually about the 911 operator not picking up on Paul Pelosi's cues that he was in trouble as he was making that call with this guy wielding the hammer in the room with him. So that's a whole lot, but what's your take?
No, I'm good on this because of my contributor status in this. I was actually sent the videos from the lawsuit that the media, all the different media organizations brought against the city to release this. So I was given the interview in the body cam before it was released and was able to review it in depth. What this shows, there's two things that have come out of this. It shows the bias in the media who attempted to cover this up because they also didn't know as well about what was going to be shown in this video, but that NBC news anchor who said that Paul Pelosi opened the door and they ended up suspending him and taking him off the air, and they said, he shouldn't have said that because it wasn't vetted properly, turned out to be the exact truth.
Yes.
So here's a major media outlet that looked to mold this narrative and protect it without even knowing. There was no there for them to protect, but it shows their bias and actually going above and beyond to suspend their own anchor, who was 100% correct based on the facts he got from the air. And the other thing was the Capitol Police is dropping the ball here. Whoever did the the vulnerability and risk assessment for that house, the fact that they weren't monitoring it because the speaker wasn't there. What if this person was just breaking into the house to plant eavesdropping devices in the speaker's house? So why wouldn't you monitor it when she's not there? What if the person was going to go in and lie in wait like this guy said he was going to do and wait for the speaker to come home and surprise her? Yeah, she would have her security detail, but does the security detail commonly walk in her own house ahead of her to do a sweep before they go in? I don't know. So those are the two main things that I take away from this.
Are you satisfied, having reviewed the tape and seen the body cam footage, are you satisfied that is as it panned out? I mean, I don't like the Pelosi's politics at all. I really don't care for Nancy Pelosi even a little bit. But it is what it is, and I also don't see any need to manufacture what's not there. And that seems like a pretty straight-up case of a lunatic breaks into their house and tries to attack the man with a hammer. Is there anything that's questionable in that story to you based on everything you reviewed now?
Well, I do have questions. The nonchalantness that Pelosi opened the door with, having a drink in one hand. It appears to be water. It's a clear liquid.
Yeah.
Sure. Just being woken up.
Yeah, that's
startled.
weird. Yeah.
He was up for a while. At this point, the guy was at least in there for 15, 20 minutes, and Paul Pelosi still kind of seemed out of it. He opened the door. He had a hand on the hammer. In his other hand, he has this glass of water. I'm assuming with some kind of liquid. And he could have ran out to the police, help me. There's questions there to be answered, but looking at it in totality, here's an older gentleman who was startled in the middle of the night, guy with a hammer, guy said he wants to kill his wife, he's going to hold him accountable because he called the police. I listened to the interview between the police officers and him, the PAP, when he was in custody. And he basically said, he's had it with the politics of Nancy Pelosi. She's lying to the public, and he wanted to hold her accountable.
Yeah.
And he was angry at Paul Pelosi for calling the police because he said, I don't want to hurt you, but I'm going to hurt you to get through to my goal if I need to. And once the police showed up, I think in his head it triggered that now I have to hurt you because the police are here and this is going to end. So I'm going to hurt you. And that's exactly what we saw. I just think,
people trying to make it out to be like it's a sexual dalliance between it. I mean, at one point I might have entertained that because there was such secrecy, but I have to be honest and say I don't see this as some sort of, middle of the night tryst with Paul Pelosi and some guy. That's clearly not what this was, right?
Yeah, based on the interview with the suspect afterwards, it goes on for about 15, 20 minutes with the investigating sergeant. I don't see it there. It was it would have had to been really well rehearsed from someone with a very good wherewithal of what they were doing if this was phony and covering up something like that. So at this point, I just think it was someone who was mentally unstable, who was holding Pelosi's, and he mentioned Hillary Clinton a bunch of times, and the Democrats lying to the public. And here's a left-wing, nut job from California. Yeah.
Rob O'Donnell, afternoon drive host. Now you're going to, does that mean you're not going to take our call anymore? You don't need us now that you got your own show? Or can we still book you?
No, not quite the opposite. You're in the morning. We don't compete against each other.
No, sincerely, congratulations, my man. I'm thrilled for you.
I appreciate it, my friend.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.